with the World Chess Championship right around the corner, I thought I'd use Chessbase 18's new features, the style report and the error report, just to try to get an objective view of what is going on here and what just might happen. Well, I'll just say that the results are not going to be anything much different than what most people think. But however, we're going to talk about what other possibilities might lie. So, first of all, what you see here on the screen is a style report for Gukesh and Ding from Ding obtaining the world championship on April the 30th in 2023. So, in other words, these are games that happened after April the 30th, 2023 until today, until their most recent games, which was however long ago. These are just classical games, by the way. There's no blitz games involved here in this analysis. One of my analysis upcoming in the video will have some blitz games in it, but it won't really matter all that much. Again, this is just for entertainment purposes. This is just for just to see how Chessbase new features work and how accurate they are. And it just generates conversation. So let's just move forward here with this style report again of their games that happened after the World Championship until today. And the reason why I did that, because it's very important to compare Ding's most recent play to Gukesh's most recent play, because Ding, again, it's seemingly that he has suffered some performance issues, while Gukesh has had some fantastic performance since that time. However, well, that just might not be the end of the story. We'll talk about that here in a second. So anyway, Gukesh had 137 games, classical games since that time, and Ding Loren has had 59. So let's just take a look at the evaluation of the features of their play and their observations. Okay, so both they score. The score is good. I mean, Gukesh is high. Ding has medium. Theory. Ding is high on theory. Gukesh probably is more of a risk taker in the opening, so to speak, but that's probably got a lot to do with him being younger and relying much more on the computer. Well, all champions, all high level chess players got to rely on a computer, but Ding, has, probably because he's an older player, he's still young, so to speak. He's 32 years old, I believe, and he turned 2,700 back in 2012. So he's, kind of had the best of both worlds of computer and not necessarily 100% computer analysis. So that might be where that, that where Ding has more theory, but Gukesh has got less theory again, because although he's from the computer age, he probably knows how to take more risk based on sidelines and things like that, and memorization from computer lines. Seems a little counterintuitive, but that's just the way I think about it. Okay, decided games. Well, there seems to be a mistake here, because it says decided games low and 0 for Ding. That's not correct. Decided games for Gukesh is about 50%, which is he's not necessarily into drawing, so to speak. Again, although this one last thing, I want to stop right here. I did notice this at first. It says blitz, rapid, simultaneous, and long games. I went through and manually took out what game said blitz, so they don't really give a percentage of blitz here. So on the other reports, they will. But anyway, let's just get back here. So tenacity, Gukesh has a lot more tenacity, and that's going to come with the fact that he seemingly in recent times has better calculation skills than Ding, as we'll see. But Ding also has a lot of tenacity. We'll see in other reports. Aggressiveness, of course, they both have very low aggressiveness. Risk. I'm surprised that Ding's. They both are the medium aggressive, risk taking, but Gukesh takes a bit more risk, which makes sense that he has a theory that's in the medium range. Positional play, though, again, very, very high. Not sure how they came up with, again, I believe this here's a mistake where they came up with 186% positional play here for Ding. But again, Ding is super, he's not necessarily aggressive, but he is a highly high level positional player and has a lot of nice wins that if he gets you where he wants you, I mean, he's definitely likely going to win the game. In game affinity, uh, Gukesh is low, and that's probably because a lot of his games are decided in the middle game. A lot of high level positional play that makes sense. So as I said in my last video, that if Ding can get him in some complex positions, make him have a worse, and then transition that to a worse end game for Gukesh, to me that would be just just one strategy other than just playing pure chess. But again, you got to have some sort of strategy based on a person's style. All right. So Ding has a lot of very short draws, narrow opening repertoire, avoids exchanges, creates counterplay. He's a positional player, often against black isolated D pawn. So all of this stuff right here really is what we see in his chess. So this is quite accurate, I think. Now going over to Ding is a strong opening, and I think this has a product to do with him coming before the computer era. Meaning that, you could probably quote unquote try a little bit more broader repertoire back in the 2010s, the early 2000s than you can so today. Nowadays, it's more like you can find one or two or three or four openings and you can just use a computer and you can just, basically just hammer them out until they're just perfect. And that's maybe somewhat along the lines of what very, very younger players do, like Gukesh. He's only 18 years old, very stout, very mature player to be 18 years old, however. But again, I think that's quite telling of his era of being brought up in that computer usage where basically the computer's just been everything. Ding has a clear opening advantage as white. He equalizes well. Now that's very important. Again, he has a lot of high level of tenacity at 45%. It's not as high as Gukesh, but again, we'll see in later times that he in an error report that he has a lot going for him. Positional play. Oh, sorry, let me go down. Avoids asymmetric material. Now, again, that is going to be something that's going to clash here because Gukesh, I think, is a little bit more risk taking, a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more positional. So he wants them imbalances, so he had to calculate more. That's going to be one of those style versus style clashes. Ding is a positional player, limits the risk. Active on the queen side, symmetric setups as white, isolated D pawn as black. Now that could be a problem because they just said he's a positional player, often against black's isolated D pawn. But Ding is good in end games. Now, aside from the fact that Ding has seemingly had, some not so stellar performance recently, if you just took the observations here, and if you didn't know who these players were and you pitted these two players against each other, you could be like, that would be quite interesting because their styles are sort of complementary to each other, that they're sort of, in a way, kind of opposite. And it's just like having a boxing match. Styles make fights. So I think styles are going to make this world championship. And because Ding has that experience of preparing for one player, and Gukesh maybe not. I mean, he probably has behind the scenes, but not publicly, I don't think. But again, Ding has some attributes here that can give him, I'm not going to say it's going to necessarily even the playing field, but can make him a formidable defender of this title. All right. So now we go down to themes and deviations here. Again, Ding hasn't played that many games, only 59 games. And again, this report for 59 games is probably not going to be as accurate as Ding's. It has 137. So he has a little bit less themes going on. As you can see, he limits risk. So as we can see in most of his games, he's limit risk because he's not playing a lot of different themes in terms of his games. He's just playing on the queen side, and he's opponent weak pawns is white. So versus Gukesh, he has several different themes, and he has more percentage of opposite castling as the average grandmaster, so that is quite interesting there. He has calm as black. He has more games. So again, when he plays with black, he probably tries to take maybe a little bit less risk. Let's just skip down pawn tension with black though. And that's important. He has a lot of more games there and a lot more strong rooks as black. This is quite interesting that Chessbase has teased out these things. I gotta say. So again, Ding has a less sample size. Gukesh has a higher sample size. In this case, again, this is just for entertainment. I know there's better ways probably to do this, but I am just going to go through it with just games for this style report from the World Championship until today because of Ding's performance. And just trying to sort of match that, align that with Gukesh. All right, so again, we won't really go through the openings because they're not really going to tell us all that much. But I just really wanted to pull this style report up just to say, what are we sort of pitting against each other? Now, if you got any more ways you think this should be done, all you got to do is say in the comments like what games, what players should be put in the style report, or even better yet, you can make a PGN with games and just send it to me. I'll run it through the style report, but once I get enough enough PGNs from different people, I'll make different style reports and make a video on it. All right, so let's move on to the error report. This is where things get interesting, or a lot more interesting. First of all, don't take this right here just because this blunder elo of 2200 versus 2400. And the reason why I say that is for two reasons. First of all, Ding has a significantly more games. So, and second of all, these games for Ding span for 12 years, and these games for Gukesh only span 2 years. And what we're looking at here is the games that each one has played since they turned 2700. And the reason that I wanted to pick that game because I felt like they might have been playing more against their own cohort, meaning 2750 players and higher. And that's what's, to me, would make the most sense. Again, not saying it's the only way to look at it, but if you got any more ways you think I should look at this or any other games that you can put in the PGN and email me, do that. And there you have that. But again, this here is just for entertainment and information purposes only. All right, so I did not remove the blitz games. As we can see, they're less than 20%. And I felt like if they was less than 20%, that they might not overall weigh a lot on the overall, bearing of the blunder elo and the blunder count, for example. So, all right, now let's just look at the observations that we have here. Gukesh, very tough in losing position, precise in bad positions. He's good against stronger players, bigger error against weaker players. And we also see the same thing for Ding, except for precise and precise and bad positions is bold for Ding. So they put a little bit more emphasis on something when it's in bold. So now let's just take a look at the trend lines and see what we got here. Here's Gukesh's first. All right. So his slope line is higher and goes and is a little bit more inclined than the average grandmasters. Though his blunder and his blunders are typically, again, obviously they're higher and they fluctuate just a little bit, but again, they still trend upward, and that makes sense. However, now let's take a look at this. Look down to the bottom where it says the result 16.7 to GM 10.5. I think you want this number lower. So again, his number is higher, but however, that doesn't mean that he necessarily would lose games. It means because you can make blunders in a position, because we've all seen it before watching games being played live. A person could make a 5-point blunder and not even know, neither player knows it's a blunder to that degree. I mean, it would take a super computer to really sort that out. So, and then look at Ding's. Ding's is more closer. Ding's is about 11, but it is over 1,800 games versus 713. So again, accounting for Ding's most recent performance, meaning his most recent performance, I'm counting from all his classical games after the World Championship. Again, although he has a potential to have a result like this compared to natural GMs. That remains to be seen. Now, if we take a look at the slope again, Gukesh's slope is a little bit higher at 0.29 versus Ding's 0.21. But now this is the interesting part. Gukesh plays more complex positions. Average GM complexity, I guess, is some sort of internal score. How they base this is ranked at about 91, but Gukesh's is ranked at 109. So he's a calculated monster for sure. He definitely loves, as we've seen in the style report, he has low theory, but very, very high positional play. And that's probably, again, it's obvious because he's, from the more computer age, he's probably calculating 20, maybe even sometime 30 moves deep. Who knows? Looking at Ding's, his complexity is about 86, slightly lower than the average GM based on this scoring system that Chessbase 18 has. But again, it's still within, I would say within an acceptable margin of error to say that, well, he's definitely playing, complexity at grandmaster level, which, well, you'd expect that he's a super grandmaster and also the world title holder. And again, just to point out again, I just want to say that don't take any of this for anything for gold here. This is just more or less just entertainment and for information purposes. There's probably better ways to do this, better ways to sort out the games. But again, this is just how I'm doing it. Just, again, just to use these features in Chessbase 18. All right, so now we're moving on. We'll briefly just go through these. Again, looking at the actual magnitude of distribution, they both look nearly the same. There's not much stands out here. They both got usually lower number of blunders than the average GM, usually, or about the same. Look at the 1.5. They both are slightly higher. So not much to say here. The evaluation here. Let's see here. Now, take a look at this, though. This is quite interesting, though. Ding has over time, has had much less blunders when he's losing than Gukesh. But again, this is also relative to complexity of position, too. Because again, complexity got a factor here because again, if Gukesh is playing super complex games, super precise, and again, don't worry, I got another error report coming that's going to be a little different than this here now. But anyway, not necessarily different than the evaluation thing, but it's a different error report. Don't you worry. Just wait a few minutes and stick around here. So again, not necessarily anything surprising here. They're both playing less blunders than the average grandmaster, of course, because I mean you can't get to 2,700 out playing less blunders to win open tournaments. So then you can get the chance to play in the invitationals. All right, impact on result. Again, very similar looking score, except for Ding still trends again larger sample size. Trends a little bit lower from worst to loss and loses quicker, having less blunders there. But again, not much anything to say much other than again, objectively speaking, if you didn't know any difference and saw these graphs, you would think, okay, this could be a nice matchup. And again, based on the style report, hopefully it is. Now let's take a look at this blunder context. Now, this is just, when you look at Ding's blunder thing, this is just scaling. And this is because under the pretense that he's played a lot more weaker opponents than Gukesh, he's made a lot more blunders against weaker opponents. He's made like 425 blunders versus Ding's 35 blunders. So all that's doing is just pushing the scale of Ding's chart down. But if you look at these, there's no way I can scale this and blow this up. But if you could blow up the chart to show the middle game, end game, under attack, show all of them, so all of those blunder contexts is bigger, you can make them more, you can rationalize them a little bit better. But be it as it may, we can rationalize them now. Basically, Ding and Gukesh makes less blunders than most GMs, and for some reason, they both make more blunders against weaker players. And I will say this about this. I've noticed when I play Blitz online, when I play, because my rating is around 2120, about 2100 or so, 22,000, 2100. So I play, games from 2000 to 2500 against 2500 players, and most of the time 2000 to 2100, low 2200 range. But I do notice when I get a chance to play 2300, 2400, 2500 players, I usually do not make blunders in the opening. I usually make it to an end game. And, and I even win some of those games, in all honesty. I've even forced draws against players that's been 300 points rated higher than me. But I do make a lot of blunders against people around my rating. I don't know why. Maybe am I taking it serious? I have no idea. I don't know. It's just could be some kind of psychological thing about it. But again, we see these notes here at the end. I just want to point this out. We don't have to go over the notes. I'll just leave them right here on the screen, and I'll let you pause the video and read those. So now let's move on to the next report. This is a little bit more interesting. This here is the games. Since this is the error report, I'm sorry about Gukesh's this chart not showing up, but it's down below. I'm just going to leave this on the screen like this right now. This is the error report for their games since Ding has won the World Championship. So basically, the games that happened after all of the classical games that happened after April the 30th of 2023. Gukesh 137, Ding 59. All right. So now looking at this blunder report, this is pretty amazing. So we already see that Gukesh has a blunder report of 2,900. Ding has a one of 2,600, and it says he's very precise in complex positions, very tough in losing positions, precise in bad positions. So as you can see, now let's go over to observations with Ding. Many calm games, lower probability for blunders. That's interesting. And very tough in losing positions and precise in bad positions. Now let's take a look at this chart here to see what we see here. If we look at this chart, look at the result of how much lower they both are since Ding won the World Championship. Ding has been a lot more cautious, and Gukesh, not only, it ain't necessarily he's been cautious, he's been calculating like, a madman, so to speak. And if you look at his slope is well below the GM line here in recent times, which is exceptional. Complexity 95, which again is in line with the average GM, but slightly higher. But again, because Ding is trying to play the calmer positions, he's playing with less complexity. So therefore, not a whole lot of risk involved. So again, as we see, that's a complementary style matchup. Somebody who wants to play dynamic and active chess, and somebody who wants to be calm. But we don't know how the World Championship is going to go. That's why this is so interesting. All right, so moving on to, again, the magnitude distribution, really not much to say here. They both, there is an uptick here in the 0.5 centipawn blunder here, or pawn blunder. I know it says centipawns, but I always count it by pawns, so I'm just saying 0.5. He has a lower amount, but one thing I do want to say about this, what is a blunder? What would you define as a blunder in terms of centipawns? I don't know if I would necessarily call a 0.5 or 50 centipawn swing a blunder. Playing against stockfish, it might be a blunder, but a human may not be a blunder. You could say outright blundering a pawn could be a blunder. You do blunder a pawn, but does it really blunder the game? Yes, it is. You blunder a pawn, your opponent has something tangible, but it's not like necessarily blundering a piece. You can just resign if you blunder a piece in most cases, but you blunder a pawn, you don't necessarily have to resign per se. So just saying, where does one count a blunder? So anyway, that's why this 50 centipawn, when I'm not taking it that serious. But we do move on. We see Ding in his recent time does have an uptick in blunders, particularly with these smaller blunders from all the way from 1 to 200. higher than the average GM. Now, that's quite telling because again, it might while he may not be dropping full pieces per se, he could be having a lot of positional concessions, and you can't really have positional concessions against somebody like Gukesh. That would be disaster. And again, Gukesh is absolutely amazing, absolutely a calculating machine. It would be disaster. So let's move on to the next one here. Evaluation raster here. They both playing less blunders than the average GM, especially in losing positions. But again, now if we look at this here under the most recent games, Ding is playing less blunders when he's losing. Although it's only a few less blunders on average, I guess. Gukesh is really, really, really focusing on that calculation. And I'm telling you, I would say Ding has some virtues. Again, he's older. Again, he's not old. I mean, he's still young in my view. He's 32. I think he graduated from a law school. So he has a way to methodically think. He has a way to sort of, he has some other life experience that he can lean on to kind of, if he need in that, I don't want to make it seem like Ding is just going to lose, but based on the observations of recent performance, based on objective numbers, it appears that Gukesh likely will win the world champion, but I don't think it's just that trivial. And at least the only reason why I just don't want it to be that trivial because, well, I do want a good match. I don't want to see somebody lose immediately. If they lose, well, that means, well, that just happens. But I'm like anybody. I want to see an exciting match. I want to see some win for wins, some losses for losses. I want to see it all. I want to see the whole 14 games. And that's it. I hope it comes down to the wire. But again, nobody knows, but we can only speculate. And again, numbers and objective reasoning tells us one thing, but reality of Ding having that experience of being in a world championship already, having, more just general life experiences, more ways to hold his nerves, it might come in clutch for him. So, all right, let's go look at the impact on our result here. And let's see here. Get that blue out of here. I hope I can get it out of here. Impact on result. Again, not a whole lot difference. Maybe there is something you can tease out here, but again, not a whole lot. I mean, nothing that stands out to me. Again, you do see, for example, better to equal being higher, but again, if you think about it, what does that even mean when it's an average, blunder? Could be small blunders. Who knows? All right, going down to the blunder context here. Under attack, now again, in recent times, if we've seen Ding, his performance, has been somewhat, lackluster. But again, I really hope he channels the Ding that played in Sinkfield Cup several years ago that I thought was a monster. Yeah. And so he has more blunders on average in such, contexts as relative to Gukesh, but he still has less blunders than average GM. But the way Gukesh is calculating and playing, I hope that, again, Ding is able to use some sort of equalizer. And I think Ding's equalizer, in my view, based on these objective numbers and objective things that we see here, his equalizer could be, hopefully he can play some complex chess that might imbalance, I wouldn't say imbalance in position, but just offset Gukesh's style, cause him to take some risk, and then take that, risk and turn it into an asset. So basically Gukesh will have a losing position and then hopefully transfer that or transpose that to an end game, a winning end game, and win the game. Again, I'm not saying I hope Ding wins. I'm not saying that I'm rooting for Ding. I'm not rooting for either player. I just hope to have a good world championship. And so with that said, this has been Chessbase 18. We've overviewing the world championship match between Ding Liren and Gukesh, and we're looking at the error reports, looking at the style reports. And this has been quite interesting for me to do this. So please give this video a thumbs up. I appreciate it. You really would help the channel out a lot that way. And I'll try to keep more content like this coming. You guys can always give me ideas, send me PGNs with games, and well, we can do some things together like that. With that said, you guys take care, and I'll see you in the next one.